Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast. This is episode 34 with Charlie and Justin. Justin, what's going on, my man?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Good. Fair week of training for you?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Nagging injury at the end of the week, so I took a active recovery day yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that on social media. Yeah. Plus, you and I talked a little bit too.
So I just did a lot of accessory work and nothing real heavy, just did a lot of reps.
Yep. So we'll preemptively give a little disclaimer here. We're back working on some acoustic stuff for the show. We busted out the microphones again because we have a guest with us today. Also, new location. We're not in Studio B nor Studio A, so this is kind of the newly dubbed Studio C. We're in the wrestling room at the high school that you attended and that I teach at. So acoustically, we may have to play with some stuff and some sound quality, so we apologize in advance if there's any issues in how you guys are able to hear us, but we're going to try to do our best with formatting and fixing stuff after the episode. So today we have a special guest who is a friend of both you and I. Our guest has spent 11 years in education, 6 as a teacher and 5 as an administrator. He has coaching experience. He's been in coaching for 16 years, 9 years as the head wrestling coach at Beaver Local High School, which is one of the top wrestling programs in the state of Ohio. 3-time OVAC Coach of the Year, which to the best of my knowledge is one of, if not the largest high school athletic conference in the country. So he's 3-time Coach of the Year. And over that tenure as head coach, over those 9 years, he's had 33 state qualifiers and 12 state placers. He's one of 15 children, which is pretty wild. He also has an identical twin brother, which we'll get to some funny stories on that in the future. He's married with 3 kids, and currently he serves as a principal at Columbiana County Career and Technical Center. He's the St. Clair Township trustee, and he's assistant wrestling coach, so he took on a little bit less of a invasive and encompassing role with the program to still be involved and still dedicate time to his family. So welcome to the show, everybody, Mr. Jordan Williams.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
That was a pretty cool introduction, man. A lot to cover there. So, one thing that we have to, I don't want to gloss over this. It's not really pertinent to the conversation, but the 15 kids thing. I mean, that's pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I think of it as a blessing, really, to have that opportunity to grow up. And really, it's probably guided the person that I am and the leader that I am. But it's really been... even now, today, we're a very close family. We're very tight-knit. People even say that. I can't believe how tight-knit your family is. You don't have fights. Or we all get along pretty well, and we all spend a lot of time with each other. And it's, it's great for my kids because they got tons of cousins to play with, and we always have something to do. So,
and I remember when I first moved down here, your brother I went to Subway. And now I had been at Beaver Local maybe for a matter of weeks, and you were one of the first people I met here, talked to you a few times. And I was at Subway getting something to eat. Well, who I thought was Jordan was in line behind me. And I said, "Hey, Coach Williams, what's going on?" And he said hello to me, but he was kind of a little bit dismissive, not very, engaging. Just "Hey, what's up?" And I was like, "How's it going? You doing all right? Having a good day?" And I thought to myself, "Oh, man, he's usually pretty positive. He must be having a bad day or something might be wrong with him." So I'm engaging in conversation with this guy. Probably about 5 minutes in, he stops me and says, "Hey," he's like, "You probably think that I'm Jordan, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not Jordan." And I was so confused. I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're not Jordan. Are you joking? Is this?" And then he was like, "No, I'm his identical twin brother," because it's Jared, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "No, I'm Jared." And I said, "Are you sure?" Actually questioning him, "Are you sure you're not Jordan?"
Yeah.
So that's my funny story with meeting his twin brother. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said something about leadership, though, because that's why we have you on today. We'll cut right to the chase. Justin and I did, and it was Justin's idea to do an episode on leadership, and we talked about defining leadership, what type of leadership roles there are, and towards the end of the episode, I brought up the star in your role moniker, which is something that you told me. We were talking one time, this was a couple years ago, where I was kind of frustrated with the situation that I was in with teaching and with coaching and things. Nothing major, just me, being overly dramatic about certain things, and I was frustrated because I said that I didn't feel like I was maximizing my potential. I felt like I had more to offer from a football standpoint or from a strength and conditioning standpoint or from a teacher standpoint. I just felt like there was more that I had that I could give to people, and I was frustrated that I didn't have a larger role. And I remember that you and I sat down, and one of the things you said to me was to star in your role. It doesn't matter what your role is, but be the best in the role that you have, because if you're constantly looking forward to other roles, you're not going to do a good job in the moment that you're in. So that was kind of one thing that I took away was always being in the moment and making sure that whatever I'm doing to the best of my ability. Another quick anecdote to go along with that was one time we were at a 7-on-7 coaching scrimmage, and I got upset at some of the other coaches, and there was kind of an argument and a little bit of a scuffle, for lack of a better term, that kind of transpired, and it got me off of my game because, like, I'm a very focused individual, but that can also be a downfall where I obsess over certain things. And, you know, I was throwing a complete temper tantrum on the field and worried about what these coaches said. And, you know, my head coach came up to me, Mike McKenzie, and said, you know, you just wasted 3 plays that you could have been coaching your position, and those kids will never get those 3 plays back. And I thought about that, and that kind of resonated with me, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying. Focus on your role and only on your role. Don't worry about outside factors. Just worry about what you're doing at the time. So can you give us a little bit of insights on where that star in your role came from? Is it something you made up? Is it something that was passed down? You know, how did you kind of develop that moniker there?
Well, you know, I was a head coach at 25. You know?
Which is extremely young for people that aren't familiar with coaching. That's really, really young to take on a big responsibility.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times I struggled early to maybe articulate what I, you know, my coaching philosophy or my thought process and a lot of these different things. But, you know, like I said, the way I was brought up, being with 14 brothers and sisters, I was the 6th boy in a row so, you know, just the kind of things I had to deal with on a daily basis has kind of really guided who I am as a leader and those types of things and the person I am. But really, it's best been explained to me, and I think it was 2016. I was listening to an interview. It was when the Cavs were going on their championship run, and Tristan Thompson had a fantastic Game 5 and 6 to really put the Cavs back into this having the opportunity to win Game 7. And he was interviewed, and he said, "I'm just being a star in my role." LeBron James, you know, kind of challenged us to be a star in our role, do what we do best, and focus on that, and that's how we're going to get to this point. And you know, that was almost like, wow. He explained in just you know, brief, you know, quick little words there what a lot of the thought process that I've had for many years as far as being a star in the role. So that's where that verbiage came from. And maybe you know, I'm sure LeBron James didn't come up with that on his own. Maybe he did, but that's where, and to me, that explains a lot of the thought process that I've taken as far as my career and everything I've done up to this point.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because when you look at that star in your role mentality, I think that sports are a pretty unique microcosm of like life. Like they kind of parallel that. So like in sports, specifically with football, which, you know, all 3 of us have played and coached and stuff, so we can, you know, kind of talk about it and be very familiar. When you talk about starring in your role, every player has to be bought in on every play. So I was listening to Colin Cowherd the other day, and he was talking about the 49ers. And one thing about the 49ers is that they are all bought into the run game. So even the receivers, you know, who typically it's looked at as like a prima donna-ish position, a very selfish position because you don't get thrown the ball enough, and half of the time you're running routes and not getting thrown the ball or you're blocking. And he said even the receivers are bought into the run game. I'm going to block and do as well as I can on every single play. And like I said, I think sports do a very good job of like paralleling that, where you learn from an early age of playing sports that you may not be the star, but you can be the star at what you do.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like humbling as you go up in sports, like from grade school to middle school to high school to college or whatever, where there's always going to be someone better than you. So you kind of have no choice but to adapt to that. You know, I'm sure for you it was kind of starring in your role as one of 15 children because you don't have a choice but to do what you're able to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and even, you know, like I said, I'm the 6th boy in a row. My oldest, there was 2 boys and then 3 girls, and there was a run of 6 boys. And that run was, you know, I mean, I guess we were pretty competitive with each other. There was a span of 10 years in there. But my oldest brother, he was kind of the, I guess you could say, the alpha dog out of all 6 of those. You know, I mean, we're playing games and different things with him where he encouraged competition and those types of things. So even just that thought process, the way his career, and he's very successful as well, but the way his career and his mental outset, you know, we all need to develop in different areas, but he kind of still has that type of mentality where I was the 6th boy in a row, and I spent my whole life just trying to claw and you know, gather myself to be on that same level.
Yeah.
And you know, and really, ultimately that mindset, being a star in your role, working hard every day, doing the best you can, making a difference. Really, it's been great. It's ultimately been one of the reasons why I think I've had a lot of success.
And I think that it's nice that you had someone like your eldest brother to serve as like a role model. Because accolade-wise, like let's talk specifically to football, because I know that was probably your guys' main sport. I mean, I know you guys were wrestlers and did a lot of other things, but if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he the career rushing yard leader at the high school by the time he graduated?
Yeah, we probably could have done a better job at Beaver Local as far as keeping statistics, but he definitely is the season rushing leader.
Okay.
As far as career, I'm not sure. It depends on how that is, but we have plenty of other. Jamin Pastor had quite a bit of yards as well.
Yeah.
So he might be the career leader, but he had the most rushing yards in the season, and I believe he still holds that.
Mm-hmm. So you always had somebody to shoot for, which is pretty nice. So moving on to the other thing we wanted to talk about in terms of your leadership role was education. We talked very briefly before the start. We said, it seems like there might be a tinge of irony because you get into a position of more leadership, but at times your ability to display that leadership to the outside eye may seem diminished. And what I mean, I'll put this in context for you. People ask me as a teacher, do you want to become an administrator? Like, would you like to be a principal or superintendent? And I always say no. And I tell people that I got into teaching because I wanted to teach, not because I wanted to be an administrator. I love being with kids and the relationships that you have with them. And then I feel like as you become an administrator, your role in leadership changes, where now instead of leading children, you're leading adults who lead children. Are there any things about teaching that you miss, or do you feel like you're in the right spot? And then if you are in the right spot, but you feel like it's only temporary, maybe you want to go back or maybe you want to continue. Like, what's your thought process on where your career is now education-wise?
Well, like you've previously stated, I spent 11 years, I'm going into my 12th year now in education. I spent, while I was going through college, I spent some time coaching and those types of things. And really, I feel fortunate that, from a young age, both my parents were educators. My dad was a principal. My mom, obviously, she raised 15 children, and my dad spent a lot of time working growing up. But they were both educators. My mom ended up being a stay-at-home mom, but for me, being an educator was something I knew I wanted to do very early on. Mm-hmm. So I feel blessed that I always knew that was something I wanted to do. As far as getting into administration, it was kind of out of necessity. I started when I first graduated college. I'm a social studies teacher. I was a social studies teacher, and very hard to find jobs. So then I went back to school to get my master's in special education, and then found a job working at the local career and technical center. And so then I said, well, I might as well switch it to become an administrator. And some different things popped up, and I ended up getting into administration after 6 years. So I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's the same, because it's not. And ultimately, I feel like, the greatest thing about sports and education is the impact you have on kids, the difference that you make in people's lives. And ultimately, you're not on that same level. And that's why I still try to find ways to coach or do something where I can make an impact in people's lives, because I'll be honest, I kind of require that. That's something that makes me that drives my life. It drives who I am. It's who I am. So I need those types of things. But ultimately, I believe that a life well served, and this is just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think the elite in life, people who really find satisfaction in life and are happy with what they're doing, are people who are invested passionately in seeing other people be successful. And I truly believe that, and I have that opportunity in administration. I have that opportunity. I would say, now I have more ways to impact people's lives, kids' lives. I get to hire people and bring people in that are going to sit with kids on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And I feel pretty strongly about what my views are about individuals who are going to be positive influences on kids and positive influences on communities. And so I have that ability where I didn't have that before. You had to sit back and see a lot of different things and try to adjust and manipulate it from your end. And now I get to see it from my end. And, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, right? And every day I'm growing, and every day I'm learning and trying to decide what best makes a great teacher and those types of things when you're hiring people. But, I have other ways to impact that too. And it's pretty rewarding helping teachers, especially teachers who are passionate about helping kids and seeing kids be successful and working on helping kids reach their goals, and helping those teachers do what my passion is. So it all has its, what is positive in life for sure.
Right. To me, that's like the foundation of good leadership, is trying to see a way to help other people rise. Good leaders all across history, have had good leaders around them or brought good leaders up with them. Like you had a big impact on Johnny's life in coaching, as a wrestler, and now he's an excellent leader in the wrestling room. You know what I mean? So like seeing good leaders come up or around you, that's like self accolades.
Yeah.
Like you get to see the product of what you're doing.
This is going to sound like a paradox too, but you can also be a leader and gain selfish benefit from it, in the sense that there's satisfaction, there's end game. So like for me, when I am going towards something like progression, like whether it's in like bodybuilding or in education, you're never going to be finished, right? It's constantly going, pushing, getting better, which is awesome. But there's just a tad bit of dissatisfaction that comes with that because you never reach your goal. Whereas if you're geared at helping other people achieve their goals, there's satisfaction and closure with it. Does that make sense? Like it's not just I'm always focused on myself and I'm never going to be good enough. Whereas if I focus on you and what your tangible goals are, you're going to achieve your goal, and then I feel satisfaction because of that. So not that I'm saying that anybody is a leader because of selfish reasons, but there are interpersonal benefits that come with that, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, I think leaders I think you have to be yourself. I mean, I really believe that. I think that you can't be something you're not. I know maybe early on in my career, when I first started at 25, I took over a program that was, and I guess I am a principal now. I always say that I coach wrestling at Beaver Local, this is the top sport here at the school. It's important to this community. It's been that way for 60 years. It's a position that people observe and they comment on and they have opinions on. And, early on, I guess I fell into the problem of, I got to be a certain way because I'm a coach. And I think early on in life, maybe as a young coach, you think, well, I got to be a tough guy, or I got to do this, or got to do this because, this community is looking to me. They have expectations for me to be a certain way. And ultimately, I think you got to be yourself and you got to lead. And I don't think there's really a certain type of leader that is successful. I think that you got to be yourself, and you got to lead in a way that makes you feel comfortable, and you can walk home and look yourself in the eye on a daily basis.
So Justin and we talked about that last episode, where the first question you and I discussed was, is leadership innate, or is it like engendered through, can you teach it? Is it something that you're born with? Is it nature, or is it nurture? And we kind of were on both ends of that.
Yeah.
We said that we believed that, leaderships is a skill that you can be predisposed to at birth, something that you just naturally have in you, like kind of like you just have about a bit of moxie about you. But there's also ways that you can strengthen what you have. A sports analogy that I could use is, I can't get everybody to run a 4.4. You either have the speed or you don't. But I can certainly get you faster than where you're at right now. So it may not be 4.40 speed, but it can be faster than where you're at. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like you were kind of predisposed to being a leader when you were born? Do you feel like maybe you were, but then that was also kind of catalyzed through having 15 children where you're kind of forced into leadership roles? Or how has it evolved as you've gotten older?
Well, I personally believe that everything can be developed. I mean, I think there's definitely some nature to situations, but I think everything, it can be uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. There's many things that are uncomfortable with me, but I believe that everything can be developed, nurtured, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way you're raised, the people that you're around, the people that you see on a daily basis. Those help you develop your leadership and those types of things. So, I guess I'm kind of on both ways, but I guess I can see points on both there. But I just prefer to believe that every day I'm developing, I'm growing,
Yeah.
and I have an opportunity to become better today than I was yesterday. And I want that type of thought process for me. I want that type of thought process for the kids that I coach, the kids that I educate, the teachers that I try to help on a daily basis. I want that.
Which I think leads into the next point then is, the different types of leadership. So most of the time, and Justin, again, we spoke about this last week, was most of the time you have people who think of they think of certain adjectives when they envision a leader. So generally someone who's loud, very vocal, kind of like leading from the front. But then Justin brought up different levels of leadership. You have people that lead from the middle and people who lead from the back, like the cliche, lead by example type of deal. And it seems to me as the people that are truly great leaders can wear both of those hats depending on who they're working with. So for you, let's delve into wrestling a little bit. We have people in this wrestling room that are from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic, political, religious, social, everything. Like they have so many different backgrounds, different lives. And you have to kind of target each kid differently. So do you feel like that's a strength of yours, being able to be the, quote, tough guy that we mentioned earlier, but then at the same end, being able to love kids up when they need to be loved? One of the things that you always said to me that was really good was coach them hard and love them harder.
Yeah. I think a good leader understands the difference of the times when you need to lead from the front, lead from the middle, or lead from the back. I think it's important. I can look at my coaching career and really and think about how that all went. My first year, I think we had 12 or 13 kids on the team. Good kids, tough kids. I mean, this is Beaver Local. We always got tough kids coming through, but 12 or 13 kids, and I had some probably really good assistant coaches at the time, guys that have been around the program, and they're all still around the program. So that year, I kind of relied on them pretty heavily. After that year, actually, one of those coaches had a kid that was younger, so he had to get out of it for a little bit and those types of things. So then I had to take more of a leadership role and do more things. And then as that career went, we were able to bring in new guys and get them involved in our program, and it put me in a different role too. So, and I think when we say be a star in your role, it doesn't mean you're not a leader. I think even as a head coach or a leader, I look at the last 9 years as a wrestling coach and think, what does my program need today, different from last year or tomorrow, that I can do to make sure we stay where we need to be, and what can I count on from my other guys to step in and do that their strong points? What are their strengths? How can I get them to invest by using their strengths into our program, into our kids, and those types of things? And I think a good leader understands when to lead from the front and when to allow the people that you've hired to bring in to do their job and to lead and give them an opportunity to lead and develop and grow.
And I noticed that when you being involved in the wrestling program last year, I noticed that with Johnny, who was actually the first interview we ever did on this show. I noticed that when you came back as an assistant, it would probably be a little bit difficult just in how you conduct yourself, because you're used to being the head coach for almost a decade. And now you have to kind of relinquish that responsibility to someone else. But I thought that you did a really good job of managing it, because there were instances where you and I said specifically where you told me, I just got to let Johnny work his way through this one, or I got to let Johnny handle this one. This is his program now. So there were instances where you could have intervened and said, hey, if it was me, I would have done this, or maybe you should try this. But it's also, like you said, relinquishing those responsibilities and letting the people you hire, so to speak, lead, which is kind of carries over again into administration, where, like you mentioned, you hire people and then you allow them to do their job. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think ultimately the goal is always the same, right? We want to see this program, Beaver Local Wrestling, be the best that it can be. Mm-hmm. And what that requires everyone to be all in. That requires, and so for me to get that, right, I need every individual to feel like they're a part of it. They're doing something special to help this program be better, to help these kids be better. And to get that is to allow them to take responsibility.
Wrestling was a very good experience for me, very beneficial for me for several reasons this year. Primarily, it helped me kind of understand that star in your role mentality, because for me, coming into wrestling, I didn't know anything about wrestling. Like I watch it and I know how the scoring works and stuff, but I should say I don't know enough to be able to coach it, of course, because I was not a wrestler growing up, and I had minimal experience with it. So for me, coming on as the strength and conditioning coach, that was the only role or only capability that I had. So when I got brought on, it was very humbling for me, because I wanted to show that I was gracious and very grateful and thankful for being brought onto the program, because the program was already pre-established. It's pretty nice to be able to jump on the bandwagon as the bandwagon's speeding down the hill, so to speak. So I wanted to actually prove that I was worth it. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, hey, I was worthwhile to bring on staff. I'm not just here for the ride and the glory. So I had to focus on my role, because that's all I had. I wasn't able to coach in the sense where I'm going to benefit kids during a match when I'm sitting in their corner. But, I could push the kids and help coach them mentally and be a leader in the weight room and from the strength and conditioning standpoint. And now I realize that, that's what I should have been doing all along. And I don't want to discredit myself and say I wasn't giving effort when I would coach in any other sports, but focusing on what I was good at and focusing on my skill set instead of trying to do everything and be the best at everything. It's be the best at what you can be the best at.
Right.
That was kind of my takeaway from wrestling this year.
Well, and the growth probably.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Perception. So your perception changed on what you were doing. One of the greatest things that happened to me. I say this every day. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was I got involved in Beaver local wrestling. At the youth level, wrestling in general, it allows you to deal with adversity on a daily basis. There's all kinds of different things that come into to deal with being successful in wrestling. But when things changed for me, really as a leader, I think, was probably my first year, 25 years old. I'm a first-year wrestling coach, and I got, I'm stepping into a program that has a lot of tradition, a lot of history, that has high expectations that come along with it. And, I'd have sleepless nights staying, how am I going to make this decision? How's this going to affect certain kids? How's this, how are parents going to take this? How's the community going to take this? I get phone calls and all the time, and, I'm trying to work through these phone calls about different things. And where it changed for me was this view of adversity, right? Adversity can be a chain around your neck that holds you down, that drags you, that hinders you from being successful. But when it changed for me, when I started viewing adversity as an opportunity, right? That phone call that I was getting from an angry parent was an opportunity for me to respond, to see what happened. If I said this, how's this work? If I did this, it was everything changed from adversity, went to an opportunity to develop, to become a better person, to be a better leader. Every situation was an opportunity to grow, and that mindset, that perception change really helped me.
And I think the only way to get to that point is repeated exposure. So it's very easy for me to say, hey, Justin, you're hitting a plateau on this. You just got to push through it. It's good that you're quote failing at a certain time, or you failed at a certain lift. It's easy to say when you're not the person going through it, but when it's me going through it, then all of a sudden it's hard to look at adversity as opportunity. The only way that I think that you can truly conceptualize it is if just the repeated bout effect. If it's just over and over exposure, the more adversity you have, the tougher you become. I mean, we see that every day with our kids. The kids that have the toughest lives sometimes or most of the time end up being the toughest individuals, mentally, physically, everything.
Yeah.
So I think that you need to kind of put yourself out there where situations are uncomfortable. And Justin, like you and I spoke about last week with leadership, some of the things that you need to do to become a good leader are just based on exposure. If you don't like public speaking. Now, I, for one, enjoy public speaking. So that was never where my leadership issues arose. But someone like you don't like public speaking. So that may be an area where, okay, how do I become a better leader? I need to put myself in an uncomfortable situation, such as public speaking, because that's one of the main stereotypes of a good leader, someone who can talk to people and communicate well, specifically in front of a large group. But that was something that always came very naturally to me. So I have to look at leadership and say, okay, what didn't come naturally for me? What were the things I had to learn? Number one was how to treat people differently. You don't want to treat everybody equally. You want to treat everybody fairly. And there's a big difference with that. There's some kids, for football specifically, or wrestling, or whatever sport I coach, where I can yell and scream and holler at them, and it motivates them. Where you can grab a kid by the face mask, shake him up a little bit, and he responds very, very well to that. We had a player that the three of us know and that you've coached, Garrett Givens, who used to tell me, get physical, scream at me, yell at me, do whatever you got to do to motivate me. And then you have other kids where when you do that, and they shut down. And you can't yell at them because then they just, shell up and they're not going to respond in a positive way. So for me, one of the hardest things that I had to learn was how to treat everybody the way that they needed to be treated in order for me to get the best out of them. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
And I think the precursor to that, again, and I don't think you have to change, maybe adjust a little bit, but and another thing I think a strong leader is relationships, right? If I built that relationship with that kid, and we're talking about small deposits of time, I can, just like I say, coach them hard or, love them harder, right? You love them hard, you build that relationship, and then when they fully understand that you're invested in them, you're passionately invested in seeing them be successful, then you sometimes you can coach them hard.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it feel like leadership can, in that sense, especially when working with children, can be like an earned. You have to earn your ability to be a leader. So when I first came into the coaching world, and again, we spoke before the podcast, I said when I got into teaching, I had no hopes or dreams or ambitions of ever being a coach. I just got contacted by the head football coach about 2 weeks into teaching, and he said, hey, want to come coach? And I was like, not really, but I guess I can give it a try and see what it's like. And then obviously here I am. But my first couple weeks in the weight room, I didn't say a word. It was just observing. And the only words that I spoke were to the kids, just telling them, hello, how are you? My name's Coach D. Nice to meet you. What grade are you going into? What position are you playing? Just slowly getting to know the kids. And then gradually, as they would do exercises, instead of saying, hey, you have to do it this way, say, hey, one thing that worked for me was maybe change this angle at the hips and you might get a little bit more glute activation on your squat. So let's try this real quick and tell me if you like it or if your way feels a little bit more comfortable. And then slowly over time, that progressively gets to the point where kids trust you enough. Like you said, they know who's genuine and who's not. I always say that kids are like dogs. How they say that dogs will attack you when they're afraid, when they sense that you're afraid of them because it's like easy to pounce on. So kids are like dogs. Like if you can be the substitute teacher who goes in front of the room and acts all cool and stuff, but the kids see that as a facade. They know that you're not very genuine. Whereas coaches who truly care about athletes and truly want what's best for them, the kids know that. They sense that and they gravitate towards that. And I see that with a lot of in you, and then not only that, but then in the wrestling program that you've built, where we have coaches that I feel like players should be comfortable coming to and discussing things, not just in wrestling, but outside in life.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
And part of that comes from your leadership and not only setting a good example for your coaches, but then hiring the right ones that you want within the program. Because I've seen that to be the downfall of many head coaches, not just in high school, but at the college and pro level as well, where they don't surround themselves with enough positivity and enough influential people. And it could be a great head coach, but the staff isn't any good. And unfortunately, that ends up being the demise. So you have to kind of surround yourself with people you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, too, whenever you're and again, my view is I've been a coach for 9 years. I haven't had to hire too many coaches because we've done pretty well with retaining people in those and teachers. But I'm a firm believer when you're hiring somebody, if I can pick out, if I can see that this person is passionately invested in kids and they want kids to be successful, to me the rest of it will come.
Yeah.
I can teach the guy to be a good teacher. I can teach. I can individuals can learn good teaching methods, good teaching techniques. But that is the number one precursor, I think, to a successful teacher is, are they passionate about kids? Do they want to see kids be successful? And is it genuine, like you said? Yeah,
you can't quantify those intangibles.
Right.
If you have someone that truly care, I can't make someone care about kids. I can't make someone care about their job. And that was kind of a paradigm shift that I went through with coaching is only, and I can speak to you, Justin, specifically about this with clients too, where I've gone and been to points where it's difficult for me to invest a lot of time emotionally and mentally into people that won't invest a lot emotionally and mentally into themselves. So it's very difficult to get people to care. You could have a teacher who you're hiring with the perfect resume, but like you said, if they don't care genuinely and deeply and wholeheartedly about kids, then it's very difficult for them to connect with them. So you're losing the holistic sense of the teacher, because the teacher isn't just academic, it's so much broader than that. And so like when I have clients, it's the same thing. people that are constantly cheating on their diet or missing workouts or lying about their weight or whatever. It's difficult for me to coach that because now I'm saying, well, I seem like I'm caring about your success more than you are.
Yeah.
So I think that if you do surround yourself with the right people and hire the right people, then you won't be left with that.
And I think most people get into education with that type of thought process. And I come from a non-traditional, I guess, teaching experience. I'm an academic instructor, but I work in a career tech center where we're hiring people from industry to come in and teach. They have zero teaching experience at all. So they're coming in from, welding, from the welding industry, from construction industry, from, all kinds of different industries. They never plan to be a teacher, right? So, I think ultimately teachers get into that with that thought process of I want to help kids. I want to see kids be successful. And then certain things happen in life. Maybe they have a couple kids, and their thought process, what their focus change. All kinds of different things. It takes time to continue to build relationships. So
passion over talent, basically. In your perspective, when you're hiring somebody, if somebody's more passionate, you can teach talent, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want somebody to have a good understanding of their curriculum,
Right.
curriculum and those types of things. But I think teaching methods and those types of things, if somebody's passionate about kids and passionate about seeing kids be successful, they're willing to learn those things because they understand the value that's going to have on their students being successful. Coaches too.
Right.
If coaches are passionately invested in seeing kids be successful, and I don't necessarily mean through athletic technique and those types of things, right? I mean, what I mean is, do I want to see this person become a good person? Am I invested in seeing this kid being a successful person? Because wins and losses come, right? I mean, you can't be 10-0 every year. You can't have 14 state champs every year. It's not possible. So ultimately, if I'm not building kids and building individuals and passionately invested in that, when those losses come, what am I offering, right? What am I doing for the community? What am I doing for those kids? I'm just another coach trying to, pad my resume and get some wins here and make myself look good. But if I'm not offering you a better life by helping you see your potential, what am I offering if I'm not offering if I don't have wins?
That's
Right.
a great way to put it, yeah, because if you don't have wins, the wins are fleeting. It comes and goes as talent rises and dips, and we've seen that here specifically at Beaver Local, like from the time that you were in school and now how the talent has risen and fallen and risen and fallen, and it comes and fluxes, like it ebbs and flows. And so when those things are gone, what do you have to stand by as far as personally, like what type of conviction do you have? Like, am I doing a good job because I'm, 4-6 as a football coach? I could be doing the best darn job that this school has ever seen as 4-6 as a football coach.
Absolutely.
Am I developing young athletes and turning them into young men or young women who are going to be successful in society? And not only that too, but just what are you teaching them as far as their mentality goes? I think that's the one thing that, I enjoy coaching with you the most is because of you're the eternal optimist. It's always positive, and even when there is negativity, you do a very good job of not showing that. That's something that I've had to work on, is not displaying negativity and wearing it on my sleeve. And to be truthful, that was eventually one of my downfalls that made me get out of coaching football for a while. I had to take a break from it because I was allowing my negativity to seep through and kind of infest the kids, where they would see Coach D's upset about this, or he's mad about this, or almost like I was pouting about certain things. And I never wanted that to be reflective in the way the kids are, because if they see that I'm not bought into something that we're doing or whatever to practice that day, then they're not going to buy in.
Yeah,
and I felt like that is something that I need to do a better job of, is becoming more positive. So how have you learned to be positive all the time?
Right? I think this is a struggle, right? There's a struggle between competition, wanting to win, and developing the person, right? So there's this battle all the time.
Those two do not go hand in hand. I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I've never really thought about it that way, but it suddenly clicked when you said that. It's developing the kid and getting the kid to win. You would think go identical, like there's a lot of parallelism there, which there is, but they can be entirely different, where sometimes your drive to win can overshadow your attempts at developing these kids, for sure.
Yeah.
The way that the analogy that I would use here in this instance, and this may be difficult for people who aren't teachers to understand, but you'll get it, was the state tests. where I want my kids to pass the state test because that's reflective on basically on their entire school year. Like, what did they learn? What did they comprehend? How well did I do as a teacher as far as my instruction goes? So you look at like the state test as like the measurement and the standard. Well, when I have kids, specifically teaching in special ed that have pretty big educational deficits or gaps, I need to meet those gaps. Well, I look at a kid who has difficult adding, and multiplying and subtracting single-digit numbers. Well, they also have to be able to do these like complex mathematical like multiplication algorithms. Well, I can teach them the algorithm and they'll remember it, but they're not conceptualizing it enough. So sometimes I'm torn between, do I teach to the test or do I teach to the basic fundamental skills that this kid is going to need in the future, because that's going to make him or her more successful than if I just taught them to the test.
Yeah.
So I feel like the winning and developing the kid don't always go hand in hand.
Well, and I think that is that's the battle, right? I mean, and we're all human. We all want to win, I mean, let's be honest. You're not going to have a job if you don't win. So that's the battle that you're facing on a daily basis. And we don't always get it right. Sometimes you're making decisions. Some kid does something stupid on a Thursday, and you could play a game on a Friday, and you got to make a decision. Do I hurt the team by not playing this kid, or those types of things? But ultimately, that's a battle that we all face as coaches. That we all have to struggle and as integrity and those types of things all fall into place there. Hopefully, you make the right decision for the kid and for everybody involved in those situations.
Sometimes you have to take a step backwards before you can take a step forward. So sometimes you have to make an example of a good player due to something unfortunate that the good player did, but then it sets the tone and the precedence for the program. So if I have a good player, like you said, on a Friday night football game, he does something stupid Thursday, beforehand, sometimes you have to bite the bullet and make an example of that kid, because they say, oh, if Coach D sits so-and-so on the bench because of this, then he'll certainly sit anybody because that's one of our best players.
And listen, I've been around, we've all been kids. Kids do dumb things. They make bad decisions.
Adults do dumb things.
We all make bad decisions.
That's how we learn.
Yeah, exactly. And, I had early on in my career, I struggled kicking kids off teams. Basically because, freshman, sophomore, junior year, kids came in and kids made mistakes. I had a hard time throwing a kid off a team. And early on in my career, I had a coach who coaches our youth program. Maybe one of the reasons why we're very successful is, he made a comment to me. He said, listen, if they're not with you, how are they getting better? How are they developing? If we're going to turn our back on kids in tough times and not help them through that, how are they getting better? So, how are they developing? But I think it's important that you have to have high standards and you got to hold kids accountable and basically for them, right? A lot of kids, they're relying on us to help them to be better people. And that's why we get into this. This is why we do it. But ultimately, if they're not with us, now if a senior's still making that decision, I spent 3 years trying to work with you, trying to help you, and you made that decision, you continue to make these decisions. Ultimately, there is a time when they start to hinder your program as well and hinder others, and you can't have that either.
And there's a very fine line there, because I don't think it's measurable. Like when you have kids that are part of a team where you say, okay, this person is bringing down the camaraderie in the locker room. This person is not performing at practice, so whoever he's practicing against is not getting any better because this person's not going very hard. I'm constantly donating so much of my mental energy towards this individual who's not reciprocating it and giving it back. So at what point do you say, okay, enough is enough? Because these kids, a lot of them, like sports, are their safe haven.
Yeah.
They have a lot going on at home, and this is their only escape. So then you're kind of you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, where it's like, okay, I have this kid, and I want to make his life and his school experience as good as I can, but how much am I really going to be taking away from the other students because this individual's here? And that's where do you draw the line? I mean, yeah, it's hard to balance, though. I don't think there's any definitive answer that we can give.
Right. There isn't. Absolutely, there's not. It's tough. Those are tough things to deal with. It's easy to sit back and criticize people on those certain decisions because, ultimately you're not. A lot of people don't understand what's going on in that kid's personal life or those types of situations. So those are tough decisions, and That's probably the worst part about
Yeah.
doing this.
I like to go back to what you guys said about like having a win or how's the kid affecting the kid's life, right? And in the wrestling room and actually in wrestling tournaments and dual meets and stuff, that's a good place to really evaluate how you are as a leader or as a coach. Because if a kid goes out and wrestles into double overtime and loses, right? Um, he obviously put out everything he had. If he comes off of the mat with his head held high, and it is what it is. I lost this one. With a good outlook on that. I'm not a wrestling coach. I someday maybe, but I feel like I would feel very good that not that he lost, but that he had the ability to hold his head out high and he gave everything.
Yeah.
A kid that throws his headgear and cries and punches the mat because he lost in regulation. Now, I would feel like I'm failing as a coach.
What you just the scenario you just talked about is, in my opinion, what makes wrestling special.
Right.
What makes wrestling different than any other sport that you can be a part of. Basically, this idea that I walk out on the mat by myself, wrestle another individual, and it's me versus him, and I may lose and have to respond in a double overtime match. And it's the kid that throws his headgear or that punches the mat. I mean, that's another thing as important as a coach. You can't take things like that personal,
Right.
Because kids are
It's emotional.
It's emotional, yeah. Kids are developing every day, right? What I want that kid to do after that is respond, right? How can I? And that's what wrestling gives you is that opportunity to immediately identify and self-evaluate issues that went wrong and how I can respond better the next time. And when kids have those opportunities, that's when the biggest growth happens. I mean, that's when growth really takes place. It's not always in the win.
Right.
It's usually in that loss where the growth really takes place for individuals.
And that's in that scenario when the wrestler comes off the mat, that initial contact from the coach, how that is delivered in this sport to me is where the good leadership is. Mm-hmm. Because I had an awesome coach, Mark Emmerling. Yeah. And when I come off the mat, and I lost a lot in high school, he would always give you what you needed. Not what you wanted to hear, but what you needed to hear. This is what you did wrong. This is where you can grow. This is what you should do. Or, hey, he was just playing better than you.
Yeah.
So good leadership comes from that.
Yeah. And it's always like a forward mentality and being progressive with how you go about things. So for me, as I became older and got more experience in coaching, I always tried to shy away from coaching efforts unless it's in the weight room or in practice. Because on the mat or on the field, everybody's trying. To yell at a kid because the kid isn't doing enough or working hard, the kid's trying out there. He just maybe doesn't know enough or his technique's not solid enough. So I was never a big fan of yelling at players for things they already know. For example, with football, if a receiver drops the ball and all the coaches are yelling at him to catch it, he knows to catch the football. He understands he's supposed to catch the football. What type of positive critique are you going to get him in order to catch the football better? Hey, your hand alignment wasn't very good, or hey, you turned your head upfield too soon before you secured the catch, or hey, you didn't tuck it well enough. Give them something tangible and something measurable. Don't just yell at him and say, hey, catch the football. He knows to catch the football.
When I was young, actually, I was going to say this earlier whenever you started talking about the star in your role, is playing through the whistle in Pop Warner football as a lineman. It's hard to get young linemen to block until the end of the play, or to run after somebody who's obviously faster than them. Yeah. So a lot of times you'll catch young linemen where they'll play while the play is right next to them, but whenever it gets downfield, they stop. They just walk with their hands down and whatever. So I had a coach when I was young that would always say, play through the whistle. And he would get fired up when somebody would block somebody clear across the line all the way into the sideline. He would get fired up about that because it was like that kid is understanding. So, but where that came from was, and I seen you jot down something that I jotted down, respect. Earlier we were talking about listening to coaches, dedication. When a coach, especially volunteer coaches and stuff, them guys that are dedicated, coming in after work in their work uniforms. I can't remember his name, but whenever I started playing for Beaver Local, there was a coach that was a garbage man, and he'd always come in his waste management gear. And for some reason, that trigger that stuck with me, because like this, I understood work. I understood like what it was to have a job as an adult. And he would work all day and then come for free and coach us.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that dedication,
Well,
he earned my respect.
Yeah. You're talking about Mr. Campbell, who's also a board member.
Yes.
Here. But, you know, you talk about that coach coming off the mat. That coach always had something to say, the right thing to say. And I think a word I look at is empathy. Respond with empathy. And empathy doesn't mean I'm easy on a kid. It's, hey, what's this kid need right now to be the best human being he can be in the future? And if he's hitting the mat or throwing a headgear, what's he need in this moment? And I tell you what, that can change in a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, when a kid walks off the mat and you grab him by the arm and you're talking to him and the way he responds, empathetic people can adjust to that conversation right there and give that kid what he needs.
I like what Johnny. I'm sorry. I like what Johnny said in his interview with us. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
You know, because even if in that scenario, a simple "I'm proud of you" can change his outlook on the situation.
Absolutely. I'm proud of every kid that walks out of here and wants to wrestle. I said this before. What you guys are doing here, putting your thoughts out in a podcast. I'm proud of anybody who walks out on there and wants to do the sport. The sport is tough.
It's very tough.
It takes everything. It takes your whole body. It takes everything you can do. I'm proud of every individual. So you might respond wrong after a match and do something stupid. Learn from it, get better, change your habits and those types of things. But if you're out here going through what we put you through on a daily basis and what it takes to be successful in this sport, I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Period.
For sure. I like that. And I think that it's important to discern between truly empathetic people and sympathetic people. So you could have sympathy for a kid, which is where you feel bad for them. But I think where empathy comes in is you feel what you understand and comprehend what they're going through versus, if someone's, lost a brother or a sister, you could say, hey, I have sympathy for you. I've never lost a brother or sister, so I have sympathy. I don't have empathy. I can't actually understand or relate to what you're going through. I assume it must be terrible. Yeah. So to have coaches that kind of understand, I think that's one thing that initially I learned early on that helped me was being younger when I got into coaching, and probably likewise with yourself, being a head coach at 25, is when you start in the game young, kids understand that there's a little bit of relativity between you. Like, hey, it wasn't very long ago that I was in high school or that I was playing sports and going through what you're going through. So I understand what you feel right now. And that's the one thing, too, that's important with leadership, I think, is just not just being genuine, but being truthful. Like, if a kid asks, hey, how did this look? Well, it didn't look very good. Well, this is what we have to fix. Yeah. And I think that adults respond to that. Children respond to that. A lot of people respond to that when they know that they can go to you for their honest opinion. Like, I see it in coaching, like specifically with bodybuilding, where people will look good, but they don't look as good as they should be or where they could be at this point in the contest prep or whatever, and coaches will blow smoke up their butt and tell them how great they look. And then, don't go to your friends and ask for advice because they're going to tell you look great no matter what. Give someone who's going to be honest with assess you. Because if they're really your friends, they're going to assess you very genuinely and very pointed and say, hey, no, you don't look very good right now. You need to pick this up or whatever.
Yeah. And that's built on a relationship that they can get away with that because they've built a relationship with you.
Yeah.
They're invested in you, and you know that. You understand that. So that's easier for them to be genuine and honest with you, right?
And there's kind of a double standard there where certain coaches can get away with certain things that other coaches can't because the kids relate to them and they trust them and they understand that their best interest is at heart.
I've worked with very few coaches in my life that don't care about kids, that don't want to see kids be successful, aren't passionately invested. Really, it's usually about their ability to communicate, articulate their love for a kid, make sure they know before they take that to a different level.
I like that. I like that a lot because sometimes coaches, and I've seen it happen, come across as being very callous or, not caring about kids' needs or loving kids, and they do. That's why they coach. But like you said, they're just not good at showing the kids first. And if you come out as a principal or as a new head coach, you're obviously the first thing on your mind is establish a culture. Because if you're filling a position, it's probably, at least in coaching, it's most likely because the culture wasn't very good or could have been better from where it's at right now. Obviously, you have people that retire and stuff, so it's not always the case. But a lot of times when you're taking over, it's because you want to change the culture. So in your mind, it's like, okay, I got to change this right now. So what happens is you go into certain situations, guns blazing, saying we're going to change this, you guys are going to be held accountable, your behavior is going to change, your grades are going to go up, you're going to work harder, and then automatically kids are going to shut down because who are you? I barely even know. You've been here for 5 minutes and you're already telling me about this program that I've been involved with for 15 years.
Yeah.
Who are you to tell me what to do? So it has to be, that's like earned. Like we talked about earlier, you have to earn the respect first.
Yeah. Respect is definitely earned.
And most people that have been along with it for 15, they don't think anything's wrong with the culture, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only way to get to that is it takes time to build relationships with that individual, with that community, to say, hey, this is the direction we're going.
Do you think parenting helped you with leadership a lot?
Parenting, what do you mean?
Just with your children. Like when you became a father, did it change necessarily how you coach or the way you coach, or did it serve as a reinforcement that you're doing things the right way, or maybe you saw that reinforcement that you're doing things that you could have done differently? I know it's a completely different type of leadership role because you're much more, as invested as you are with these kids, you're even more so invested with your children because you live with them.
Yeah. I think parenting, like I said, everything you do in life, you take something from, you learn from. I've had the opportunity to coach plenty of kids that parents are deeply involved with them being successful, and all parents come from a positive point of view. They want to see their kids be. I mean, no parent. You hear of negative parents who don't care about their kids or pushing their kids too hard and those types of kids. Parents don't get into sports with that type of thing. They mean well. Parents mean well. They want their kid to be successful, and they're trying to help them the best they can. So I guess my point of view is maybe I've learned from that to maybe hopefully be able to control myself in some of these situations where sometimes parents, again, not from a point of they want to see their kid be successful and work hard and do those things, and sometimes you take it too far or you do certain things. I've been around very few of that. Most of it's pretty positive, and I think the majority of it is positive. You want to see your kid be successful, but I think as a parent, I don't know that it changed me as a coach. It really I don't want to say it cut down my time, but really it really probably ended up with what got me out of coaching, basically because of I wasn't able to build the same amount of relationships that I was prior to that, and I didn't want to see coaching slip. At home, when I would go home at night, I spent a lot of time before I had kids contacting kids, talking to them, building relationships with them. Then you have kids, you go home and you're spending time with kids, and there's nothing wrong. You have to do that. So you spend less time building relationships with kids, and ultimately that affects your ability to lead in the right way. And I didn't feel it at the end, but I could see it going. If I couldn't continue to do that on that end, I wanted to make sure. I care about Beaver Local Wrestling. I want to make sure it stays in the right place.
So is it safe to say that, in essence, your effectiveness of a leader, you saw that there was potential for it to slip a little bit, and that's basically the impetus for you to get out of coaching for a little bit, or at least step down from the head role?
From that role.
Yeah.
Where I have to. I feel fortunate that I got to. Like I said, I knew I wanted to be a coach, a teacher from the time that I was, old enough to start thinking about what I wanted to do. And I feel fortunate that I got to do it at the school that I care most about. Right, I grew up in this community. My family are a big part of this community. They're actively involved in seeing this community be better. So I was very fortunate. But also on the other hand, too, is what was good for that on me is I was more invested in this program, and I guess this goes into leadership, than just wins and losses. I cared more deeply about it than a selfish reason. Right. Than promoting myself or becoming better. And I think that may have helped me to be a part of it. I hear oftentimes coaches say, don't go work in the community that you grew up in. It's a bad move. For me, I think it helped me become a leader because, I I've been around coaches and, all the stereotypes of being a good coach, ego or, you're not humble or those types of things. I had a love for Beaver. I have a love for Beaver Local that didn't allow me to do that, basically because I want the best for this program. So it didn't allow me to have this. I'm okay with bringing anybody in here that can teach my kids, better technique or do anything to help this program. It didn't allow me to do that, which I think ultimately helped me as a person to understand the importance of being a starter in the role.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the decision was made when I decided to step down that I can't do it at the same level, and that's not fair to Beaver Local Wrestling and a program that I love and cherish to do that. So I'll take a step back and do a role that I can still, be a part of and help out.
I think it's
That's
interesting.
honorable.
Yeah, it's very honorable. I like how you said the part about, you taking a step back or whatever, because the leadership role wasn't going to be as strong and connected as it could be. And I also liked how you said about the passion that you had for this place was unique for you as me as an outsider coming in and moving down here, 6 years ago or whatever. I'd never heard of this place, don't know, not familiar with the area. And I would say things, and I still do, and I think that I need to change this now. This is a learning experience for me. And when I say things like in the weight room, like I'm learning to star in my role, and I tell kids, when you perform poorly on the field because of physical deficits, like the other team's stronger than us, or the other team's faster than us, or the other team's bigger than us, I would always tell them that's a reflection on me. That's a poor reflection on me. I think that as I approach that going forward, I need to say that that is a reflection on us, because in turn, it sounds like I'm being selfish and I want them to perform because it reflects negatively on me, which is obviously that's part of it. No one wants to look like the court jester who doesn't have his kids in shape. But at the same time, I need to let them know that like this is more than just me and how I look. This is about us, because you're making yourself look bad. You're making me look bad. And you're making, the other 55 guys in the football roster, or the other 35 guys in the wrestling room, or the other 15 guys on the basketball court. You're making them look poorly as well because you're not prepared to be ready to play. So I think that was kind of my big takeaway from that, was maybe I need to show a deeper love for the process and the entity, which is the school system, not just the sport itself or the sports program. I think branching off in other sports definitely helps too, because you've coached multiple sports. And when you coach one sport, you get so focused on that particular sport. But then when you coach multiple, you see the school as a holistic unit. Like, all our kids need to be participating in all these sports.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a firm believer in sports as an avenue. I think there's no better way to reach kids than sports, the arena, the wrestling mat. That's a classroom to me.
Mm-hmm.
In things that are that some people would argue the most important thing that kids are going to learn: how to respond appropriately in adverse situations, how to be a good teammate, how to be a good individual. These are, that sport doesn't matter what sport it is. That's the avenue to teach those kids, and the social skills, the social intelligence, the emotional intelligence that kids need to operate successfully in this. That's all taught in sporting arenas, in my personal opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, a lot of people who aren't involved in sports look at it as very, very meatheadish, and they don't really understand what goes into athletics as far as developing, the child as a whole. Like you said, intellectual intelligence, social intelligence, emotional intelligence. There's different ways that kids learn, and we learn that as teachers. And I think that sports do such a phenomenal job of preparing you and developing you for life, because I think that sports confront you with a lot more adversity than the classroom does. And the unfortunate reality is that life will confront you with the most amount of adversity. So the only way to prepare for that is exposure, and the only way for exposure is going to be through sports.
Yeah, sports is the most lifelike thing that you're going to deal with before you have to.
Yep,
deal with it.
100%. 100%
Absolutely.
agree.
It's incredibly important.
I couldn't imagine where I would be without sports.
And really, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I don't care where somebody has to respond to adversity, regardless of this, the sport, maybe the activity. It's important to expose your kids to those types of things, just for that opportunity to respond for emotional awareness, social awareness.
And I've even seen it happen in life where I'm actually aware the sports background helping me, where, there's been certain instances where I've, faced adversity and thought about packing it in. Like, you finish second at a bodybuilding show, and you're like, do I really want to suffer and do all this stuff for second place? Like, do I really want to continue this? Or, things that happen in the community where, like, do I really want to put up with this? Like, why don't I just move and get out of here?
Yeah.
Where there's things that have confronted me, and I've actually drawn from that sports background and say, hey, this is 4th and inches. Are you going to pack it in and punt? Are you just going to, like, lose the game? Or are you going to go for it here? What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? So I've actually become aware of sports helping me.
Well, yeah, sports did that to you, right?
Yeah.
You're embracing the journey.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at it as a journey. It's you're on a timeline. You're getting better every day. And sports did that for you.
I think that's a good place to kind of move forward with our wrap-up questions. Yeah. So every episode that we interview a guest, we have several questions that we ask each individual. It's kind of long-winded, but we try to make everything come back full circle. So obviously the Chasing Dreams podcast, as the name would imply, focuses on giving people the tools necessary to achieve and chase their dreams. So what we do is we bring on guests of higher accolades than us that we like to learn from and give exposure to our audience on how you can become a better person, how you can become a better leader, how you can be more successful. And what we want to do is we want to bring it back all the way to the Chasing Dreams moniker and what that stands for and kind of what we have going on with our entire podcast. So what we do is, like I said, every episode we bring these questions up. And I'll actually read the questions for today. I got to give Justin credit for these questions because he was the one who came up with these before. And like I said, we ask every guest that comes on our show. So I'll read them all at once, and then we'll come back and revisit them each individually. So the questions are, what does the phrase chasing dreams mean to you? Do you feel as though you've chased your dreams thus far? How do you continue to chase your dreams and help others do the same? So let's talk about the first one. What does the phrase chasing dreams mean for you? So take that at a personal level. When you think about chasing your dreams, that could mean, as a coach, as an administrator, as a father, as Jordan Williams personally, what are you doing to chase your dreams? Like, what does that phrase mean to you?
I think chasing dreams, I guess, for me, I guess, it doesn't matter the avenue. As a father, as a teacher, as an educator, as a trustee, now the position that I'm in, it doesn't, regardless, it's chasing my dreams would be every day working to become a better person, to reach my maximum potential, really, is really what chasing dreams, and doing that is, in my opinion, is helping others do the same thing. So I guess chasing dreams would be every day work hard to help individuals become better individual people, and ultimately, to me, that's success.
I think that kind of delves into the next question too. Do you, or the last question of how do you continue to chase your dreams and help others do the same? Is it suffice to say that it's all about meeting your potential and helping other people's meet theirs? Because that's what you said. You said the potential, and I thought that's a good way to look at it because success is going to vary from person to person. And I think that an interesting way to think about it now that you say that would be success is all predicated on what your potential is. So success for me, from a bodybuilding standpoint, would be to step on a national level stage and place top 10 or top 5 a couple years down the road. It may not be realistic for me to say, oh, I want to win Mr. Olympia in order to be successful, because you need to have ambitious and lofty goals, but you could set yourself up for failure if you set them too far out of your reach. So I think that the term you use as far as potential, I think that's good.
Yeah.
And then do you feel as though you've chased your dreams thus far?
Absolutely. I think that, like I said, I was born into a wonderful family. I had a lot of brothers and sisters. I knew what I wanted to do from the very beginning, and I had the opportunity to live in a community and to be a part of a school system and a school community. Not only this community, but the community that I work with in the county, where I get the opportunity to affect people's lives on a daily basis, and make a difference in my kids' lives, make a difference in the community in which I live, and positively impact people who are a part of this community. So absolutely, I look forward to every day. I look forward to waking up every morning and doing something else to make lives better for the people that I live with and
awesome.
People around me.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your positive outlook and insights. I mean, there were several times that I wanted to make sure that I spoke up about them where you said something that kind of hit home with me or changed my thought process. I'm like, oh, I just learned something there. Oh, I just learned something there. One of the things that Justin and I have been adamant about through the whole process of this podcast is not letting anybody even get an iota of a thought that we are doing this because we think that we have something to offer. We don't necessarily think that we have something to offer. We're not better than anybody. We don't have any of these questions about leadership or dream chasing or success figured out. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We started this journey to help learn from other people. So we bring guests on who are more qualified, potentially better spoken, have more experience than us. That's why we bring them on. So I like showing people that this is a learning experience for Justin and I as well. When our guests say stuff, Justin and I will both speak up and say, oh, well, that's interesting that you say that because that makes me think of this or, whatever. So it's an ongoing learning experience for us. So we really appreciate you taking the time. Before we close shop and do the last bits and notes with you, we have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Beast Mode Baking, for our commercial. So Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality and creative and, of course, delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders are for pre-order in order to be packed fresh and ship them out to you ASAP. They offer flat rate shipping of $15 due to the size and weight of the cookies and dough. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, check out a friend of the show and earlier interview guest, Shannon Knorr, and her Instagram is @SKNOR13. That's @SKNORR13. And she will be able to direct you to the website via her bio, and she has lots of delicious pictures of all her baked goods, which we say this every episode, the pictures or the words don't do it justice.
You got to look at the pictures.
You got to look at the pictures, and you'll be sure to order from there. So we appreciate you guys supporting Beast Mode Baking, because every time you support them, you support us as well. So Mr. Williams, Coach Williams, Jordan Williams, Father Williams, you got a lot of hats that you wear. Just to close up shop here, what is a way that people can reach out to you if they want to contact you or ask further questions about leadership? You're on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I don't use Twitter a whole lot. I think my tag is Mr. Williams 903 maybe.
Okay.
My email, jordan.williams@ccctc.k12.oh.us. That's my email. You're welcome to email me there.
And we will also contact or put your Instagram when we tag you in the show notes and stuff like that. Yeah. And also, if anybody wants to speak to Coach Williams directly, you can also contact Justin and I. We can put you in contact with you. So,
well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, I commend you guys for doing what you're doing, and I understand completely as far as this is an opportunity for you guys to learn. I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I try to read a lot of different books, and every day, I'm trying to grab something else that I can take a hold of and use in my life to make it better and to help others. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast. This has been episode 34 with Charlie, Justin, and Coach Williams. So you guys enjoy the outro music, and we will see you all next week.